This lawless partisan impeachment is a political suicide march for the Democrat Party. Have you seen my polls in the last 4 weeks?
That was President Trump at a rally in Michigan last night, predicting that impeachment will actually hurt the Democrats in 2020 and help him win re-election. American University history professor Allan Lichtman is known for his predictions. He's actually correctly called the last 9 presidential elections. He's the author of The Case for Impeachment. You know, Professor Lichtman, that's always a great title to say you've been able to predict all those elections. I have to say we love using that. But I want to ask you, Professor, you say you don't believe the president's right when he says impeachment will backfire on the Democrats. Why is that?
He's not right. I've been able to predict the last 9 elections, including Donald Trump's win. And by the way, I got a very nice note from him after the election using my system, the 13 keys to the White House. And one of the keys that counts against the party holding the White House is the scandal key. And by becoming only the 3rd American president to be impeached by the full House, that turns the scandal key against him. By itself, that's not enough to predict his defeat, but it's certainly not something that you want going into an election.
So you talk about your 13 keys in making your election predictions. Can you sort of just remind us what those are?
Yeah. The keys say forget the polls and forget the pundits. Keep your eye on the big picture. And the 13 keys are based on the premise that American presidential elections are essentially votes up or down in the party holding the White House. And they measure the strength and performance of the White House party. So they look at things like party mandate, which is midterm elections, internal party contests, incumbency, third party, the political keys, 2 economic keys, policy change, social unrest, of course, scandal, foreign and military failure and success. And the only keys that have anything to do with the candidates, whether the incumbent candidate is like a Ronald Reagan, charismatic, or like Dwight Eisenhower, a national hero, and the same thing for the challenging candidate.
So I want to play for you what you said when you appeared here on CBSN on Red and Blue back in October.
I don't think an inquiry is enough. I think to nail down that scandal key that you saw portrayed, which would be another key turned against the incumbent Republicans, you've got to go through with actual impeachment, make Trump the 3rd president in history to actually be impeached by the full House. Mm-hmm.
Now that the president's been impeached, are you more confident about the Democrats' chances in 2020?
I think it improves the Democratic chances. But the way my system works, it takes 6 negative keys to count out the incumbent party, Donald Trump, and the Republicans. The scandal key moves it up to 4 to 5 keys. So there still are not enough keys out yet to predict Donald Trump's defeat. Right now, the election is too close to call, and a lot of keys are still hanging fire. Third party, social unrest, short-term economy. Can the Democrats somehow come up with another Barack Obama, a charismatic candidate? And as we know, in the age of Trump, things can change overnight. So I'm not making a final prediction yet.
You're not making a final prediction yet. But, you know, some people might counter that and say, we're just in a different place. You know, the Republican Party is so much more polarized, as is the Democratic Party, that maybe could your keys actually be wrong because the economy is doing well? Some might argue that there isn't a really dynamic Democratic candidate that's really emerged that will mobilize folks in November. Could your keys be wrong this go round?
Of course my keys could always be wrong. You know, I'm not psychic Gene Dixon. I don't have a crystal ball. My keys are based on history. But I have to tell you, every 4 years, someone comes up and says, oh, this time your keys are going to be wrong because a black African-American is running.
Yes.
This time your keys are going to be wrong because a woman is running. This time your keys are going to be wrong because of polarization. And I got to tell you, my keys have been right since 1984. And retrospectively, all the way back to the horse and buggy days of 1860 when Abraham Lincoln was elected. So you know what? I'm not inclined to change them on the fly.
Hey, you went back to Abraham Lincoln. I'm not going to argue with that.
Few people do, but some do.
It's a pretty good record, Professor, a pretty good record. I do want to step back now and ask you, though, about the impact that this impeachment will have on our politics, both sides suggesting that this will have consequences for years to come. What's your view on that?
I think it will have consequences. Look, whether you think the case was made or not, the accusations against Donald Trump are the most serious accusations made against any president, including Richard Nixon. No president in history has been accused of shaking down a foreign nation, particularly a vulnerable one, to get involved in an American presidential election to help the president cheat. No president in American history has ever been accused of going to a foreign nation and putting his own political advantage ahead of the national security. How those issues get resolved in the Senate and get resolved by public opinion is going to shape the history of the presidency for the foreseeable future, and perhaps irreparably damage our democracy if it proves to be okay for a president to do what Donald Trump did, get foreign nations involved in interfering, poisoning our democracy on behalf of a president. And that's why it's so important that we have a real trial in the Senate, not a mock trial that Mitch McConnell wants with no witnesses. Come on, we know that all the information is never fully developed in the indictment or charging stage. That's why every trial worth anything, has witnesses, has documents. We've got to have that in the Senate trial for the American people to make their own judgments. And Nancy Pelosi is absolutely right in withholding sending on the articles of impeachment until Mitch McConnell becomes honest and impartial and agrees to a real trial. What is the White House hiding by preventing witnesses with direct knowledge of what he did to testify? Look, he's put us in the ultimate catch-22. Democrats, your case is weak because you don't have enough witnesses with direct contact with the president, but I'm going to block all of those witnesses.
We'll have to wait and see what happens. A lot of people passionate about this one. I want to thank you, Professor Allan Lichtman, who's got a great track record about who will win in November. Thank you so much, Professor, for joining us.
Thank you. It was a great talk.